Personal growth often comes with hard lessons. Sometimes acceptance is easier than hoping for change. When Tommy graduated high school and got accepted to State University 3 hours away, you would think he had won the Nobel Prize. Mom and Dad threw a huge party, invited all the relatives, and made speeches about their brilliant son. Grandma Rose sat in the corner, watching it all with those knowing eyes of hers. For the first few months, all we heard during family dinners was how well Tommy was doing at college. He would call home weekly, telling stories about his classes, his professors, and his bright future in business. Mom and Dad would put him on speakerphone, beaming with pride. Then came the letter. I was in my senior year of high school when Dad stormed into the house, waving an official-looking envelope, his face purple with rage. Tommy was on academic probation, at risk of being expelled. It turned out all those study sessions he had been talking about were actually parties. He barely attended any classes. Grandma Rose showed up the next day. I had never seen her so angry. "If you don't get that boy in line," she told my parents, her voice like steel, "don't expect me to pay for another college when he gets himself kicked out of this one. And believe me, no other school will take him with these grades." The threat of losing Grandma's money sent my parents into a panic. They drove to State University that very weekend. I don't know exactly what they said to Tommy, but when he called the following week, he sounded different, subdued. For once in his life, Tommy had to face actual consequences. By some miracle, Tommy managed to pull his grades up enough to stay in school. He graduated 4 years later and decided to stay in that city, taking a job at a local company. Meanwhile, I had gotten into the business management program at City College, just 20 minutes from home. Grandma Rose paid my tuition too, though my parents barely seemed to notice I was in college at all. When I made the dean's list, the only celebration was a phone call with Grandma. Years flew by, and suddenly, I was graduating with honors. Grandma was there, of course, beaming proudly. My parents showed up too, though they spent most of the ceremony talking about how Tommy was doing at his new job. I didn't care anymore. I had my degree and, better yet, a job offer from Parker & Associates, one of the biggest marketing firms in town. When Grandma Rose passed away, it felt like the world stopped spinning for a while. The day of her funeral, I couldn't stop staring at her garden, wondering who would tend to her beloved roses now. The reading of the will was held in her attorney's office a week after the funeral. Tommy flew in from out of state, wearing an expensive suit that somehow still made him look like a kid playing dress-up. Mom and Dad sat between us, as if they were still needed as buffers after all these years. "Mrs. Rose Parker's estate," the attorney began, adjusting his glasses, "is to be divided between her 2 grandchildren, Nicole and Thomas Parker." He paused, looking at both of us. "The division is to be determined by their own choice. One will receive the house, and the other will receive a sum of $500,000. The first choice goes to Thomas, as the elder grandchild." Tommy actually snorted. "Is this some kind of joke?" he said, looking around the room. "You really expect me to want that musty old house?" "No, I'll take the money. I've got plans. I'm going to start my own business, show everyone what I can do. Nicole can have the old lady's house with all its weird smells and creaky floors." I sat there, my heart pounding. The house, Grandma's house, my sanctuary all those years. "I'll take it," I said quietly but firmly. The next few years passed in a blur of hard work and determination at Parker & Associates. I threw myself into every project, every challenge. My team's sales numbers kept breaking records, and within 3 years, I was promoted to head of sales. The salary increases that came with my success went straight into renovating Grandma's house. I took my time with the renovation, carefully preserving the house's character while modernizing everything else. New wiring, new plumbing, a state-of-the-art kitchen that still somehow felt like it belonged in a Victorian home. The garden, I did myself, learning everything I could about roses and continuing Grandma's legacy. Mom and Dad came to visit once it was done. I watched their faces as they walked through the restored rooms, saw how their eyes widened at the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the gourmet kitchen. "This is incredible," Mom said, running her hand along the marble countertop. Dad nodded, then sighed. "It's a shame Tommy didn't take the house. This would have been perfect for him and his new wife. And there it was. Some things never change." "Speaking of which," Mom added, trying to sound casual, "have you heard from your brother lately?" I hadn't, of course. None of us had been invited to his wedding 6 months ago. He had gotten married in his wife's hometown, surrounded by her family and their mutual friends. Mom had shown me pictures she'd found on Facebook, Tommy in a tux, his new wife, Rebecca, beaming in designer white. The doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon while I was pruning Grandma's roses. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I took my time wiping the dirt from my hands before heading to the door. When I opened it, I nearly dropped my gardening gloves. There stood Tommy, looking nothing like the competent businessman he had been pretending to be on social media. Beside him stood a woman I recognized from the wedding photos, Rebecca, his wife. She wore designer clothes and too much makeup, her eyes scanning my home like she was conducting an inspection. Tommy gave me an apologetic look. "Can we talk privately for a minute, Nikki?" he asked. We stepped into Grandma's old study, now my home office. Tommy closed the door behind us and turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, desperation. "I need your help, sis," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The business, it's not good. We're about to lose everything. We had to give up our apartment." He ran his hands through his hair. "Could we stay here for a while, just until things turn around?" I stood there, stunned. Tommy had never asked me for anything before, unless you counted all those years of demanded lunches and ironed clothes. "Please," he added, and for the first time since we were kids, I saw my brother instead of my parents' golden child. "Okay," I heard myself say, but just temporarily. The next morning, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Mom and Dad, practically bouncing with excitement. We came as soon as Tommy told us. Mom rushed past me to embrace Rebecca. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so happy to finally meet you in person." For the next 2 hours, I might as well have been invisible. I served coffee at Mom's imperious request and listened as Rebecca charmed my parents with stories about her family, social connections, and Tommy's brilliant business ventures. "Nicole," Mom called out as I headed to the kitchen, "be a dear and make us some lunch, something nice. Rebecca's used to fine dining." That set the tone for the weeks that followed. I'd come home from long days at work to find Tommy and Rebecca lounging in my living room, expecting dinner to magically appear. "Aren't you going to start cooking?" Rebecca asked one evening, not looking up from her phone. "We're starving." "I just worked a 12-hour day," I replied, dropping my briefcase. "Why don't you cook something?" Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me? You should be grateful we let you stay here at all. The least you could do is cook decent meals." I turned to Tommy, confused. He pulled me into the study again. "Look," he whispered urgently. "Rebecca thinks this is my house." "She thinks I'm letting you stay here out of kindness. She comes from money. She's used to a certain lifestyle. If she finds out I'm basically bankrupt," his voice cracked, "she'll leave me." I stared at my brother, this man who'd had everything handed to him his whole life, now reduced to begging me to lie to his wife. "Fine," I said finally. "I won't tell her, but you two need to start treating me with respect in my own home. No more demands, no more attitude. Deal?" "Deal." Tommy nodded quickly. "Thank you, Nikki. I mean it." True to his word, Tommy's demands for home-cooked meals stopped. Instead, I'd come home to find takeout containers from the city's finest restaurants scattered across my kitchen counter. Rebecca would be lounging on my sofa, picking at pad thai or sushi, barely acknowledging my presence. I didn't ask questions. Honestly, I was just relieved not to be playing chef after long days at the office. I settled into my own routine, grabbing dinner from the casual cafe near work. The arrangement seemed to be working. They stayed out of my way, and I stayed out of theirs. Then came the phone call. "Nicole," Mom's voice had that tone, the one she used when she was about to demand something. "We need to discuss the restaurant bills. Tommy told us you'd cover the expenses at the end of the month. It's nearly $3,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Excuse me?" "Well, you can't expect them to starve," Mom continued, as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "Tommy said you agreed to handle their food expenses since they're going through a rough patch. I've been putting it all on my credit card. I'll text you the account details for the transfer." I hung up, my hand shaking as I pulled up my text messages and sent one to Tommy. "Come to me now." He must have heard something in those words because he appeared in my study within 15 minutes. Rebecca was out shopping. With whose money, I didn't want to know. "Care to explain why Mom thinks I'm paying for your 5-star takeout habit?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Tommy's face did that thing it used to do when we were kids and he got caught in a lie. A quick flash of guilt before the excuses started flowing. "Nikki, you have to understand." "Understand what? That you're stealing from our parents now too?" "I'm not stealing." He ran his hands through his hair. "I just borrowed. I was going to pay them back when things turned around, but Rebecca, she has certain expectations. If she knew how bad things really are..." "Stop." I held up my hand. "I've heard enough about Rebecca's expectations. This ends now." "I'll figure something out," he promised, his eyes pleading. "Just give me more time. Don't tell Rebecca. Please, Nikki, I've never asked you for anything." "Never asked me for anything?" I stood up, my voice rising. Are you kidding me? My entire childhood was spent catering to your needs, and now you're living in my house, lying to your wife, and scamming our parents. I know. He held up his hands. I'm sorry. Really, just one more chance. I'll handle the restaurant bills, I promise. I stared at my brother, this man who had everything handed to him his whole life, now reduced to begging his little sister to keep his house of cards from collapsing. Fine, I said finally, one more chance. But I mean it, Tommy. Figure out your own food situation, and I'm not paying a cent of those bills. Life fell into an uncomfortable routine over the next 2 months. I'd go to work, manage my department, come home to find my house looking like a hurricane had swept through it, and spend my evenings cleaning up after Tommy and Rebecca. They seemed to exist in their own bubble of leisure, lunches with our parents, dinners at expensive restaurants, shopping trips I didn't want to know the details of. Then came the day that changed everything. Tommy had left early, muttering something about a business meeting. I came home from work earlier than usual, having wrapped up a major sales presentation, looking forward to a quiet evening with a glass of wine. Rebecca was waiting for me in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa like a queen about to deliver a royal decree. We need to talk, she announced, gesturing to the armchair across from her. Sit. I raised an eyebrow at her tone but sat down anyway. Might as well hear whatever this was about. I've been patient, Rebecca began, examining her manicured nails. I've watched you swagger around this house like you own the place, making everyone uncomfortable. But enough is enough. I blinked. Excuse me? From now on, you'll pay us $2,000 a month in rent. That's more than fair, given the neighborhood. She smiled tightly. And you'll resume cooking and cleaning duties. The state of this house is embarrassing, and since you're the tenant, I couldn't help it. I started laughing, not a polite chuckle, but full-blown tears in my eyes laughter. Rebecca's face darkened. What exactly is so amusing? I wiped my eyes, trying to catch my breath. Rebecca, honey, there seems to be a misunderstanding. This is my house. I own it. Your husband is living here because I took pity on him when he came begging at my door. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Call him, I said, leaning back in my chair. Go ahead. Ask Tommy who owns this house. Her hand shaking slightly, Rebecca pulled out her phone and dialed. Tommy answered on the second ring. Darling, her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Nicole is spinning some ridiculous story about owning the house. Tell her she's mistaken. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. She's telling the truth. Tommy's voice crackled through the speaker. It's her house. Grandma left it to her in the will. I took the money instead to start a business, but I failed. We're broke. I've been trying to find a way to tell you. Rebecca stood up so fast she knocked over her water glass. I watched as she stormed upstairs, her drawers slamming, closet doors banging. Within 20 minutes, she was dragging her designer suitcases down my stairs. She didn't say a word as she left. The slam of the front door echoed through the house like a gunshot. The morning after Rebecca left, I was enjoying my coffee in peaceful silence when Tommy burst through the front door, his face twisted with rage, all traces of yesterday's contrition gone. This is all your fault, he shouted, stalking into my kitchen. Rebecca's filing for divorce. She won't even talk to me. You had no right to tell her the truth. I set my coffee cup down carefully, remembering all the times I had backed down from him over the years. Not this time. No right? I stood up slowly. This is my house, Tommy. The house you laughed at me for choosing, the house you said smelled like an old lady, the house you've been lying about to your wife while mooching off our parents, and you're telling me I had no right? You ruined everything! He slammed his fist on my counter. You've always been jealous of me, haven't you? Always waiting for a chance to get back at me. Get out, my voice was quiet but firm. Take your things and go. He stared at me for a moment, then stormed upstairs. I listened to him throwing things around in the guest room, probably breaking something expensive. I didn't care. When he came back down with his bags, he gave me one last venomous look. I had exactly 1 hour of peace before my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. How could you do this to your brother? She said, not even bothering with hello. He's devastated. He's back home with us now, crying his eyes out. That's not my problem. Of course it's your problem. Dad's voice now. They had me on speaker. You need to give Tommy the house. It's the only way to save his marriage. Rebecca might come back if they have a proper home. I actually laughed. Are you serious? You want me to give away my house because Tommy lied to his wife and ruined his business? Help your brother. Mom was practically shrieking now. Family helps family. Really? I felt a lifetime of resentment bubbling up. Where was that family spirit when I was cooking and cleaning for Tommy as a kid? Where was it when you ignored my achievements because you were too busy praising him? The only person who ever treated me like family was Grandma, and she left this house to me. This conversation is over. 2 months later, I heard through work colleagues that Tommy's company had officially declared bankruptcy. His divorce was finalized around the same time. He was living with our parents, apparently regrouping, their favorite word for Tommy's failures. I wasn't surprised when all three of them showed up at my door one Sunday afternoon. Mom was clutching a casserole dish like a peace offering. Dad had that stern look he used to use when he was about to lecture me about family duty. Tommy stood behind them, trying to look pitiful. I watched them through the security camera Grandma had installed years ago. They rang the bell again and again. Mom started calling out, "Nicole, we know you're in there. We need to talk about this, as a family." I picked up my phone and sent a single text to all three of them. "Please leave. Do not come back. This is your only warning before I call the police." They left eventually, but not before Mom left the casserole on my porch with a note about forgiveness and family obligations. I donated the casserole to the homeless shelter down the street. These days, my life is peaceful. I tend to Grandma's roses, which are blooming more beautifully than ever. My career is thriving. I made executive vice president last month. I feel good, and it's all thanks to Grandma. As I sit on the porch swing that Grandma Rose loved so much, watching the sun dip below the horizon and paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, I can't help but reflect on how far I've come. The roses are in full bloom this evening, their petals unfurling like secrets finally set free. It's been 6 months since that fateful Sunday when my family showed up at my door, casserole in hand, demanding I fix the mess Tommy had made of his life. 6 months of blessed silence, no more phone calls laced with guilt trips, no more unannounced visits, no more expectations that I play the role of the dutiful daughter and sister who'd always clean up after everyone else. For the first time in my life, I feel truly unburdened, like I've shed a skin that was never mine to begin with. Peace isn't something I ever thought I'd associate with my family story. Growing up, peace was the rare, quiet moments when Tommy wasn't around, demanding attention or getting praised for mediocrity while my efforts went unnoticed. I remember the resentment that used to simmer inside me like a pot left on low heat, always threatening to boil over but never quite doing so. I'd swallow it down, tell myself it didn't matter, that one day I'd prove my worth. But looking back, that resentment was a teacher in disguise. It taught me resilience, the kind that comes from forging your own path when no one else believes in you. Grandma saw that in me, she always did. Her will wasn't just about the house or the money. It was her final lesson, her way of saying, "Nicole, choose what nourishes your soul, not what shines for others." When Tommy and Rebecca invaded my space, I felt a mix of pity and frustration. Pity for my brother, who at 30-something still couldn't stand on his own 2 feet, and frustration at myself for letting him in. Why did I say yes? Part of it was habit, the little sister who'd always given in. But deeper down, it was a test for myself. Could I set boundaries? Could I finally say no when it mattered? Watching Rebecca lord over my home, treating me like hired help, stirred something fierce in me. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. For years, I'd let my family define my value through their lens, Tommy the star, me the supporting act. But in that moment, laughing at her absurd demands, I reclaimed my narrative. The truth spilling out wasn't vengeance, it was liberation. The aftermath was messy, as family reckonings often are. Tommy's rage in my kitchen that morning felt like the culmination of every childhood slight, every time he'd taken without giving back. His accusation of jealousy hit hard, not because it was true, but because it revealed how little he knew me. Jealous? Of what? A life built on lies and handouts? No, what I envied, if anything, was the unconditional love our parents showered on him, the kind that blinded them to his flaws and my strengths. Hearing Mom and Dad on the phone, demanding I give up my home to save his marriage, cracked open a wound I'd long since bandaged. It hurt, deeply, to realize that even now, in my success, I was still second best in their eyes. Family helps family, they said. But where was that help when I was grinding through college, working part-time jobs while maintaining straight A's? Where was it when Grandma was my only cheerleader? I cried that night after hanging up on them, not out of sadness for what I'd lost, but for the little girl inside me who'd craved their approval for so long. It was a release, those tears, washing away the last vestiges of hope that they'd change. Acceptance came quietly in the days that followed. I blocked their numbers not out of spite, but self-preservation. The security camera footage of them on my porch, ringing the bell insistently, became a symbol they were on the outside now, literally and figuratively. Donating that casserole felt petty at first, but then empowering. It was my way of saying, your guilt offerings don't work anymore. I'm full on my own. These days, my emotions ebb and flow like the tides in Grandma's garden pond. There's gratitude, overwhelming at times, for the life I've built. My promotion to executive vice president at Parker and Associates wasn't just a title, it was validation from a world beyond family ties. I lead a team of brilliant people, close deals that shape industries, and come home to a space that's wholly mine. The renovations I poured my heart into, the warm glow of the restored chandelier in the dining room, the scent of fresh herbs in the kitchen, remind me daily of my capability. I host dinner parties now, not out of obligation, but joy. Friends gather around my table, sharing stories and laughter, and in those moments I feel seen, truly seen for who I am. Yet, woven through the gratitude is a thread of sadness, not for my family, but for what could have been. I wonder about Tommy sometimes. Is he still regrouping at our parents' house, or has he finally hit rock bottom enough to rebuild? Bankruptcy and divorce are harsh teachers, but maybe they'll do for him what no one else could, force growth. I don't hate him. Pity has softened into a distant compassion. He's my brother, after all, blood that binds even when it chafes. As for Mom and Dad, the sadness is sharper. They're getting older, and part of me aches at the thought of them alone with their regrets. But I've learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gardens, protecting what grows within. Loneliness creeps in occasionally, especially on quiet evenings like this. The house is big for one person, echoing with memories of Grandma's laughter and the life we shared. I think about dating, about finding someone who sees my strength as an asset, not a threat. But I'm not rushing, for now. Solitude is a friend, teaching me to love my own company. I've started journaling, pouring out these emotions onto pages that Grandma would have approved of, honest, unfiltered. It's therapeutic, this sharing with myself, acknowledging the anger that lingers, the pride that swells, the hope that flickers for reconciliation on my terms. Hope. Yes, there's that too. Not the naive kind that expects miracles, but a grounded optimism. Maybe one day Tommy will knock on my door not to demand, but to apologize. Maybe Mom and Dad will reflect on their favoritism and reach out with genuine remorse. Or maybe not. Either way, I'm okay. I've bloomed in ways they never imagined, tended by Grandma's legacy and my own determination. The roses nod in agreement as the last light fades, their fragrance a reminder. Growth comes from roots deep in truth, not the shallow soil of others' expectations. Sometimes I walk through the garden at dawn, dew-kissed petals brushing my fingers, and whisper thanks to Grandma. You knew, I say to the air, you always knew. Her spirit feels alive here, in the thorns that protect the beauty, in the blooms that return year after year. She taught me that personal growth isn't linear. It's a cycle of pruning, waiting, and flourishing. The hard lessons? They've sculpted me into someone resilient, compassionate, and unapologetically myself. As night falls, I head inside, the porch swing creaking softly behind me. Tomorrow brings another day at work, another chance to lead and innovate. But tonight, in this peaceful sanctuary, I feel content. The emotions, gratitude, sadness, hope, swirl like petals in the wind, but they don't overwhelm. They've become part of the landscape, beautiful in their complexity. This is my story now, written in rose-scented ink, and I'm the author, finally free to pen the ending I deserve.